Hey everybody, thank you for joining me, Sterling, and Firefly again today. Before I say anything else, just thank you so much to all of you who reached out with messages and comments, questions, everything about my van tour video a couple weeks ago. Your words were so warm and just really touched my heart to connect with all of you fellow nomads or people who want to be on the road or people in your houses who are just interested in this lifestyle. I really appreciated everything that you had to say about this beautiful home of mine. So thank you again. And today we're going to be talking about some of the pros and cons of van life. I've gotten some questions about that, about what do I really enjoy on the road and what is a little bit harder. When I talk about the cons as well, I'll kind of show you how I mitigate and combat those cons to make them not quite so bad. But before we get into that, the last couple weeks I've been in the Central Cascades, so wanted to show you all a little bit of the beauty of this area. So just as van life has pros and cons, my last couple weeks have had some pros and cons as well. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows. I did have a flare-up of plantar fasciitis, which for those of you who don't know is when the band around your foot inflames and it hurts so bad it basically you become like incapable of walking. It happened to me while I was on a hike, so I had to hike about like 2-3 miles, feeling like nails were just being driven into my feet. So that was pretty horrible. Luckily, I do have a friend who's a doctor, thanks Ryan, who reached out and really kind of helped me figure out some ways to mitigate that pain. So I'm on the mend. I'm not quite able to hike or anything right this second. So if any of you have struggled with this, that have some tips, tricks for when that flares up, some surefire ways to make that pain lessen, throw them in the comments below. Never hurts to hear more about how to stay out of excruciating pain. The other kind of con that happened in the last couple weeks is I did have Firefly vandalized while I was sleeping in Seattle. I wrote a lot about my feelings about this on my Instagram, so check that out if you want to kind of learn more on my thoughts of just what's happening in the world around these things, and also around the kind of division in van life when it comes to those who choose to live in their vans and those who are maybe forced into living in vans. I'm not going to go into it all right this second because that's not the point of this video, but I do have that on my Instagram if you want to engage in that discussion. I did get the graffiti off, luckily, and back on the road with a perfectly clean van. So not the end of the world, but was an interesting experience and definitely, made me think about how to keep safe. I will be putting out a video, I don't think the next one, but the one after that, on how to stay safe on the road as I update my security systems and things around the van. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, I'm going to start with the cons so that we end on a pro. My first con of van life is that things break or just stop working or shut down or whatever all the time. I mean, it's pretty constant how often things go wrong. Since I've been on the road, I've had mechanical issues. I've had an issue with my electric system that I needed to fix. I needed to rebuild a couple of things. I've had, just little things here and there break. It's just kind of an everyday process of maintaining everything. There's a lot that goes into these vans, and they're on cargo vans, which are not the most reliable vehicles in the entire world. So things do go wrong. Luckily, nothing that bad has happened, and I do tend to factor that into basically rent costs. And so, that helps mitigate that con a little bit. The other way that I help mitigate that con is by just being really, really prepared. So for mechanical issues, I have a device that can plug in. So if my check engine light comes on, I can plug it in and use it on my phone, and that will tell me what's going on. I also use a GPS activator that turns my phone into a satellite phone. It's called Somewhere. It's pretty awesome. I use this so that if I do get stranded out on a dirt road or something while I'm alone, then I can call a tow truck or get any kind of help that I need. I also use this while I'm backpacking and stuff in the backcountry. It's a pretty useful little device. Same with being prepared, you have your tools, everything with you. And that leads me to the pro. You have everything you own. So usually when something breaks, as long as it doesn't take like a professional to fix it, you have the capability to fix most things. I have a toolbox with me. I have, all of my instruction manuals, owner's manuals, everything to kind of toy out what exactly has gone wrong and how I can fix it on my own. This is a pro too of having everything with you. I know before I started van life, I still traveled a lot and would move around a lot, and I was constantly unloading and reloading this suitcase all the time. It was just like, toiletries and this and that, just like constantly going in different bags, and I always felt like my stuff was just scattered throughout all these different houses or storage units or suitcases, and I never felt like truly comfortable. Here in the van, I have everything in its place. I know where it is, and no matter where I travel, I have everything that makes it feel like a home right with me. This next con is one I get asked about a lot, and that is, do I get lonely on the road? And the answer to that is absolutely. Yes, I do sometimes. I think my personality fits well with van life in that I'm an ambivert. I can be pretty introverted or extroverted. But when you have those times of just like really wanting a connection with somebody, or dating, or any of these things that it's helpful to have a community around you, then it can get pretty lonely. I mitigate this, of course, with this one mostly. He's my main companion, and having a dog really helps with loneliness. So I know that, not everybody can have one, but if you can get a pup, especially if you can rescue a pup, I highly suggest it. They're pretty perfect. The other way that I mitigate loneliness is by going to van life gatherings. Obviously with COVID, this is breaking that down, and I think COVID in general is hurting everybody, right, with the loneliness factor. But the nomad community, I think, has been hit pretty hard because our normal avenues for meeting each other are kind of out the window at this point. So van life gatherings in normal years are so awesome. They're super fun. You meet all these different people with all these different kind of vans, and I've met a lot of friends that I'm still in touch with today, and then you can caravan with each other. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that post-COVID. And then the other way that I mitigate things is just by being online. and talking to friends and family. And I have like a schedule with certain friends of like when we will talk on the phone, video chat, which is really helpful for me to kind of be able to look at my schedule and plan around, okay, I need service tonight, so I can talk to my friend Jess. We have our Thursday night date, and, really being very intentional about checking in with people and making that connection with people. The pro I'll talk about in relation to this one is because I am alone so often, it actually made me pick up a new sport, which is mountain biking. So that's specific to me, but as far as a pro goes, van life really just gives you a lot of access to new ideas, new sports, new hobbies. I know a lot of people who have started playing an instrument. I bought a ukulele, still working on that one. But have just like picked up new things from either people they meet or areas they're inspired by, different natural areas that they go to, that they kind of learn more about who am I, what do I want to be doing with my day. And that kind of helps you weed out some of that loneliness. It's just finding activities that you can do, whether you're alone or maybe you're with one other person, but you're not necessarily in huge groups all the time or surrounded by people. It just gives you that space to explore yourself and explore you and what you want as a person. One con of van life that could really be applied to any tiny living situation is that it gets really messy really fast. And so, you're outside all the time and you're dragging in dirt. If you have a dog, you're extra dragging in dirt. You can find sand in your bed. When you have the windows open and driving, dust is coming in. Also, if you cook one meal, it's just dishes everywhere. Get lazy for one day. So it can become very overwhelming very quickly with the level of mess in such a small space. The pro, of course, is that it's also pretty easy to clean. So it can go from looking like this to all of a sudden looking like this very, very quickly. And so, some ways that I combat this extreme mess situation is I keep a broom right next to the door. I built the van so that you can't see dirt very well. So I mentioned this in the van tour, but people who have really beautiful white interiors, you're gonna have a harder time keeping it spotless looking. I also do wash my feet before getting into bed every day to try to keep that sand out, change into clean clothes anytime I'm there. I also keep mats right outside the door, a welcome mat, and then if I'm really kind of parked somewhere for a minute, I also have a sand mat that I bring out and I put underneath, where I work and where I'm kind of hanging out, just to try to minimize how much dirt is coming in the van. Another con to van life is temperature control and just kind of exposure to the elements in general. It can get pretty hot or pretty cold or pretty damp or lots of insects in the van. Technically you're living in a tin can, so it's kind of hard to completely regulate how it's going to feel inside. I've mitigated this as best as humanly possible. I insulated with sheep's wool. I have reflective window coverings for the front windows. I have a temperature or a thermal curtain between the cab and the cabin. I have a Propex heater for the cold. I have a Max Air fan, which I love because you can even use it in the rain, and a skylight, which when combined create a nice breeze through here. I have an awning that I can take on and off outside. It's a moonshade awning. I really love it. You can see me here wrestling with it a little bit because it was my first time putting up, but it really goes up and down very quickly and is a nice alternative to like $1,000 awning that's put on the side. Awnings can be crazy expensive, so this is my alternative. It's built by a van lifer. Really cool. Yeah, especially having a dog in the van, I have to be really careful about temperature control. So far, I'm really happy with the build and how I've been able to regulate the temperature, but it's not perfect. As you can see here, Sterling's pretty hot right this second. We're gonna go outside right when we're done filming this. Of course he stops panting. Whatever. So as far as mitigation goes, that's what I do. The pro on the other side of this is that you do kind of get to follow the weather. I try to stay in, 70, 75 degrees. Not always perfect. Today it was a really hot day in Washington, but it'll go back down to the 70s. So, I like being in moderate temperatures anyway. So with the van, it's a wonderful pro that I just get to go wherever the best weather is for the kind of outdoor activities and things I like to do outside. One more quick note on temperature control. You always want to have a really good blanket in the van, and one that you can bring outside because you want to watch the sunsets when it's nice and breezy out. And then something just so that if your heater goes out or whatever, you have a freak cold night, you're not just freezing all night long. I use the voited blankets. This one right here. Ta-da! Super cute designs on it. And it was designed by a Vanlifer, and so she really knew what a Vanlifer might want in a blanket. Like I said, you can bring it outside. Mine's the Cloud Touch, so it has a really soft interior. You can fold it into a sleeping bag like it is right now, or you can fold it into a pillow, and so it doesn't take up a ton of space in the van. So if you're interested in one of these blankets, it is linked below with a coupon code for 20% off. So let's really just dive right on in on this next one. For those that saw my van tour video, you know that this is where my composting toilet is, right underneath the couch here. It pulls out when I want to use it. If you're living in van life or in an RV or, whatever, you're gonna have to get pretty up close and personal with your own waste. Whether you're peeing in a water bottle and digging a hole, or just peeing outside, or if you have a black tank or cassette toilet, composting toilet, which is what I have, anything, you have to get pretty up close and personal with things that we as people have not really been acclimatized to, especially in the Western civilization. So it may take some getting used to, and it's not pleasant, the way that I mitigate this con is by having a composting toilet, because it is in my opinion, just the best option. Doesn't really stink. It's not hugely unpleasant to empty, but it's not great. It's not my favorite time of the day, or month, or however often I do it. I do the black tank, the black compost, about once every 5 weeks. And then the pee bottle gets emptied every couple days. And, like I said, neither of that is a fun experience, but it's not terrible with the composting toilet, at least. The plus side to this one is that you are totally self-contained. So wherever you are, whether you're pulling up to a campsite, you don't need to spend time, scouting out where's the best place for a tent, or setting up the tent, setting up kitchen, whatever. You're all just right in there. If you're driving, you can pull over on the side of the road and use the bathroom or cook yourself a meal, or whatever you have to do. In urban areas, you can stealth camp because you're all just contained in this one little area. So it's very cozy, and I really love that. I also like that about having a van versus a travel trailer or something like that, just because you can just go straight from the cab right into the cabin without even really having to step outside if you don't want to. So if you're in a sketchy area, or it's really cold or pouring rain or whatever, then you're just all right in that little spot. The next con I'll talk about is the constant struggle to find service. So when you're living on the road full time, and particularly when you work remotely like I do, it is a battle to find service, and especially enough service to send in documents, to upload videos, to do what you have to do to live comfortably on the road, get your work done, and just stay in touch with friends and family. Definitely a lot of us are online. I think a lot as full-time nomads, just because it does bring that sense of community. So to have the ability to get online is pretty important, and sometimes you can't find that information very easily. I try to mitigate this con by using different apps. I use iOverlander and Free Roam particularly, and then every once in a while reaching out on social media, things like that, and trying to find other areas where people have found great service and been able to do this. But it can get very stressful sometimes when you're driving around and you can't find service and you have a deadline, or your hotspot data runs out on the phone, things like that. So the battle for service is definitely one of the harder things about living in a van. Of course, the pro side to this one is the one I'll leave you with, because in my opinion, it is the most important. It's the reason that I do van life, while probably a lot of us are attracted to van life, right? This is my office, and even though it may be hard to find service sometimes, or it could get lonely on the road, or things break down, or some of these other cons that are on the list, I would not trade this for anything. I feel very lucky to be able to have van life, to be able to work out here, to have really beautiful views all around me. For my mental health, being in nature is the absolute number one thing that keeps me sane, it keeps me happy, and just keeps me inspired and ready to move through life. So if van life is something that you're debating, and that's why you're watching these pro-con videos, if it's something that you're hesitant to, please reach out. I would love to answer any concerns that you have, any questions, because I think if this is something that you want, go for it, because it is the most wonderful thing in the world to be able to be out here and just living life on your terms, creating a life that's intentional and amazing. That's what I coach around. That's what is who I am, is helping people really connect with these powerful places that let them create intentional lives. And that's what I feel van life brings for me. So number one pro is just van life in general is awesome. And that is it for me today and the pros and cons of van life. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them below. I'm gonna film a Q&A segment this next week and try to answer any questions that people have been sending in big amounts, such as how do I make money on the road, and how do I find a campsite? So if you have any pressing questions about me, about Sterling, about Firefly, van life in general, anything like that, feel free to drop them below, and I will try to get to as many questions as I possibly can in that video. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. It does help me continue to be able to bring content to you, and this is turning out to be something really fun. So I love connecting with you all here or out on the road, wherever we get a chance to meet in the future. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.